This is the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. AWS is fond of saying security is job zero. That means it's nobody in particular's job, which means it falls to the rest of us. Just the news you need to know, none of the fluff. Hello and welcome to Last Week in AWS Security Edition. Let's get after it. I found what is probably the most exhaustive guide to S3 logging that I've ever come across. Beware of cost traps, but also the complexity of querying infrequently asked logs. You get to rediscover that process all over again if you're not careful. Good on JumpCloud for disclosing a breach by some state-backed APT hacking group, but I learned about it from this article, and I'm a JumpCloud customer. You really want your customers to hear the bad news from you, not random third-party sites. Charlie Bell has apparently managed to free himself from the executive washroom in which he has been trapped for the past 2 years and issue a security roadmap for Microsoft. Protect Azure DevOps secrets is the first item on it. What a novel idea! And companies use overarching brands partially in pursuit of the halo effect that good feelings around one business unit convey to others. They often lose sight of the fact that the inverse is also true. So when Amazon told drivers not to worry about in-van surveillance cameras and now footage is leaking online, it raises very uncomfortable questions around AWS's data security and internal controls as well. Is this fair? I think so. You want the good parts of the brand, you've got to take the bad parts as well. And this is another feather in the cap of the split-off AWS argument. I was also wondering about this thing. It turns out that yes, the compromised Microsoft key that they glossed over is incredibly important, and Microsoft is downplaying it something fierce. The attack is very bad, as in congressional hearings bad, but the hiding of it is something far worse, and that erodes even more trust that Microsoft can ill afford to lose at this point. Now, enough community stuff. What AWS say? Optimize AWS config for AWS Security Hub to effectively manage your cloud security posture. The problem here is that this never mentions cost, which is a big problem with config. I saw an EKS environment last week that cost more in config charges than it did EC2 instances. The service can get very spendy, where it's a significant cost driver behind some AWS bills. I very much dislike this pattern of treating security information as a profit center. And over in the open source tool side of the world, IAM Action Hunter lets you query IAM permission policies, which is great because they're very hard to audit as soon as you pass a certain degree of complexity. And that's what happened last week in AWS security. Let's roll onward. Thank you for listening to the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. For the latest in AWS security that actually matters, please follow AWS Morning Brief on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever the hell it is you find the dulcet tones of my voice, and be sure to sign up for the Last Week in AWS newsletter at lastweekinaws.com.